All right. Good afternoon and potentially good morning to everyone here. Thanks so much for joining us today. Just a quick introduction for myself. I'm Michael Halford. I am a payroll and HR sales expert here at Greenshades Software. I've been in the payroll landscape now for about 4 years or so, and during that time, worked for a couple of different providers and gotten a lot of different experiences. Also have some experience managing retail locations for retail stores for AT&T, and just being with that, managing employees, developing them, training them, and dealing with everything that you have to do as far as payroll and HR. So that's a quick snapshot of me, and I'll kick it over to Jody so she can introduce herself.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for being here. My name is Jody Thibodeau. I'm an account executive here with Greenshades. I've been in this field in HR and technology for over 20 years. Started out staffing and recruiting, ended up migrating into technology, and then kind of married the two. So it gives me some unique perspective. So I really enjoy consulting with companies, helping them improve their HR tech stack, streamline their processes so that they can grow and flourish. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about kind of understanding the workplace landscape, talk about a payroll first migration approach. Then we're going to talk a little bit about finding the right payroll solution for you when you decide to make that move, and then we'll wrap everything up. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mike at this point.
All right. So for our first topic here, let's talk about kind of understanding the current Dynamics environment and what's going on in the world of Dynamics. I think that most of the folks who are in here right now are going to be in that workspace. Potentially, the majority will be in Dynamics GP, which has been around for quite some time. And, in the industry, there's been a lot of talk about change as far as what Microsoft is doing with GP and what the overall limitations are about the system, where it's going, and what's going to happen. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about when we get to the life cycle is, there's been kind of a common date that's thrown around is at the end of 2028, Microsoft Dynamics GP will no longer be supported by Microsoft. And, there are certain things that means to a lot of folks, but mainly for the folks who are using payroll within Dynamics GP, that's going to be quite a big change to their world and how they operate. And so that's what we're here to kind of talk about is how to navigate those changes, what the plan potentially should be for you and how Greenshades can help you. So that's what we're talking about when we look at exploring future systems. So understanding the current workforce. So really what we have here is the workforce is really evolving, and the ideal situation is having a system that can keep up with that evolving landscape and be able to support you, help automate as many things as possible, and just make your life as administrators and as employers easier, as well as also making it easier for your employees to manage everything that they have as far as being an employee and what they need from a human resources standpoint in order to make sure that they're supported.
Yeah, I think
So
that makes you more competitive as well
yeah,
in this
definitely.
market because it's hard to find talent. And so being competitive is important.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're being honest, I don't know if anybody in this room has recently looked for a job in the last probably 2 or 3 years, ever since we had COVID-19 and quarantine and things changed a lot as far as the landscape. But I mean, I was in that boat, and really one of the things that I was looking at is how the company could support me as an employee and make it so that the culture is there as far as what I'm looking for, the ability to, make me feel valued as an employee, but also the ability to make sure that I have, the good benefits and good, work-life balance and all of that stuff. So that's really what we're kind of talking about here. So some of these numbers that we're looking at here, 85% of employees have a positive outlook on their organization's culture, compared with 47% of those without that kind of flexibility that we're talking about. So really you can see it. That's a drastic change of, close to 40% difference as far as, positive outlook when they do have those capabilities for them. And then 55% of employees living paycheck to paycheck, up from 43% in 2022. I mean, we hear the talk all the time about inflation and the cost of living and everything going up. And so that means that in prospective employees are looking for a competitive pay structure and the ability to, graduate from living that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. And the last number that we have here is 85% of organizations will be cloud first by 2025. That's next year. And I actually talked with one of my colleagues yesterday, and he put it in a really great sense of light for those companies that are still not working on the cloud. If in your everyday life you have your iPhone or your mobile device or what have you, how many times are you signing into a system that you use on pretty much a daily basis that's on premise? Pretty much everything's cloud. Everything's web based, being able to sign in from everywhere and just makes it easier as far as the capabilities, the security, everything. So really like the cloud landscape is the future of everything. And we're already doing that in
Absolutely.
everyday lives. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot to unpack with all those numbers there, but just kind of our thoughts on what we're talking about. So moving into the limitations of Dynamics GP, kind of what we're speaking about here. So like I said, GP's been around for a long time. One of the things that you can say about that is it's very reliable, but at the same time, it's kind of outdated and there's really like a lack of new features. There's also a lack of automation. If you want to be able to have new features or automation or anything like that, oftentimes you have to purchase third-party stuff that adds on and bolts on the GP in order to make that capability there, which we know how that can get messy and cause potential issues, but also down the road you have problems with the systems syncing with each other. So that's just really adding a lot to that. It's kind of like working on a car that's you're pouring thousands of dollars into a car that has a blue book value of like $1,500. It doesn't really make sense. So you know one of the other things with GP, very the flexibility and scalability is kind of limited. The future is not really that long for GP when we talk about being able to improve it or make it better or be able to use it for future proofing. That's kind of why Microsoft is graduated to these other dynamic systems, is because we're kind of missing out on that. And so that's what we're talking about. GP definitely has a long history as being a strong on-premise ERP, but it does have a pretty minimal payroll solution, and that can kind of hamper your ability to efficiently manage and support the growth of your clients or your employees and changes in their business. And we've seen that pretty often. I mean, we have our payroll solution for Greenshades, and when we compare it with what happens in GP, almost every time on a demo, the person I'm speaking with, their face lights up and says, "Wow, this is so amazing! It's so much easier." And it's just because they don't know what they don't know. They're used to what they've seen in GP for so long for payroll that they don't know what a modern payroll solution really looks like. And Jody, I know you can speak a little bit to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about just the other day, I was in a demo and they shared with me that there's only two PTO codes in GP. And so the fact that they could have an unlimited number of PTO codes, in our system, is a huge difference and could automate so much for them. So yeah, there's a lot of differences. And, I think with any modern system, you're going to get more functionality.
It's almost just things that you take for granted, right? Like you wouldn't even think about
Hmm.
that from our standpoint. We're like, wow, unlimited PTO, that should be a given. But yeah, you just don't even think about that almost.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what you don't know, like you said. Okay, so let's take a little bit of time and talk about a payroll first migration approach. So we do hear from our clients, prospects, et cetera, from y'all that there are some concerns about moving payroll. And so kind of wanted to address some of those, some of the things that we hear. What if my payroll does not integrate with my new ERP system? Well, the reality is that when you use a modern system, cloud technology with an open API, it actually gives you a lot more flexibility. That way, you not only can integrate with your ERP, but now you can integrate with other applications and systems as well, ATS systems, if you need a different time solution, anything like that. So it gives you a lot more flexibility, actually. I'm not ready to move off of my payroll, off of GP. So one of the things that you can think about, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but in a payroll first migration, thinking about the whole picture, if you start with the payroll, you can actually kind of simplify the overall transition. So by doing the payroll first, which is a smaller lift, that kind of it allows you to kind of move everything in, get it stabilized, and then you can look at the bigger picture. And so you're kind of managing, how you would allow resources, or tap into resources. Why would I move my payroll when it's free? Well, one of the things that Michael was alluding to is that really there's a lot of cost involved in utilizing a system that does not have a lot of flexibility. And like Michael was saying, sometimes you're having to bolt on different types of solutions. Maybe it's a Greenshades solution, maybe it's another solution that you're using to kind of fill those gaps. Also workarounds, extra clicks, anything like that. All of those things actually have a cost to them. Anytime you have extra time that you're spending in something, there's a cost to that. And then I see no reason to move my payroll system right now. Just think about the fact that your system may be working for you right now, but as the landscape is changing and the workforce is changing, like Michael was saying, that all of those things are going to create more complexity in your payroll. And so now, as you grow and you scale, and your clients or your employees have different needs, things like that, you need to be able to adapt to those things and address them. And so getting into a more modern solution gives you that flexibility and again, makes you more competitive in the market. So why should I start with payroll? Um, First of all, as we shared, the market is changing. And so it may be time for you to evaluate to the current system so that you can adopt to all of those changes, as we were saying. Compliance, of course, is critical, and we're always concerned about compliance. It's one of the things that we hang our hat on. And regulations change with some frequency, actually. And so when you have an on-prem product for your payroll, you have scheduled occasional updates. You have to manually update those or upload those updates. With a cloud product, that's happening behind the scenes on a regular basis. And so you no longer really have to worry about that compliance because it's really taken care of for you. One of the examples that I like to talk about is that Alabama, they passed a law that was effective 1/1. Now they are not charging or doing taxes on overtime. So if you had not updated your on-prem product or were unaware of regulations changing and things like that, you literally could run a single payroll and be out of compliance. And so with those cloud solutions, that's happening all the time, and you always have, or you're always in compliance. So big deal.
It's a scary prospect, honestly. I mean, that's
Yeah,
something you could be unwittingly doing that you've done the same way for years and years. And, you miss it by one date or one day or one week, and all of a sudden you're out of compliance and you have to go back through and make a ton of changes and make sure your taxes are right and all that stuff. And that's
right.
just
Yeah.
then the time that it takes to correct all of that, talking about that hidden cost, those are some other things that can come into
Yep.
play.
Yeah,
Crazy.
absolutely. Yeah, and unfortunately, ignorance is never a defense, right? So, so
Never
you
worked for me
got,
before.
yeah, exactly. So also cloud solutions offer not only your admins, but your employees a flexibility to handle things remotely on the run, all of those things, whether it be payroll, HR, tax, anything like that, from approved locations. And so it gives you a lot of flexibility. And our market is changing so much. So many people are on the fly or they're working remotely. And so cloud just gives you the opportunity to do that. And then, obviously, as GP slows down on their upgrades, you're going to need a system that's continuing to monitor and grow with those workforce changes. And so, as they become more complex, that your tool that you utilize is going to be able to address that. And so, processing your payroll outside of your EP can provide you with more flexibility and also insights. You're able to run payroll in your terms. And then, you can address the GL mapping to make sure that you're adjusting for any needs. And then that flows into your GP for your financial reporting with the integrations. And so it gives you a lot of flexibility and visibility. So let's just break down kind of the phased approach to payroll and kind of the advantages of it. And so, first of all, modern systems are often giving you better integrations and capabilities to your business systems and platforms. And so that's going to give you kind of seamless integration with your current ERP, with a new one if when you decide that you do want to move. And it just enhances your overall compatibility and performance. Risk mitigation, big. I mean, obviously, we just talked about, compliance and those compliance updates. When you are in a cloud-based, you're not having to worry about that. That is somebody else's worry because it's taken care of for you. And you really, when your payroll and your HR system, its sole purpose is payroll, HR, and tax. That's what they're there to do, is keep you in compliance. And the other aspect of that is that payroll is such a critical business function. I don't know about you, Mike, but I like getting my check. So, and any disruption in that can have serious implications. Someone told me years ago that the minute something goes wrong with payroll, it gets emotional fast. And it's true. So this way you can really focus on ensuring that that essential operation is stable and functional before you tackle the broader picture, and potentially think about an ERP migration, which could potentially be a little bit more disruptive. Testing and adjustments. Migrating Payroll First provides you with the opportunity to test the new system and its capabilities, get acclimated, get everybody trained, all of those things before thinking about a full ERP transition. So it also can identify like potential problem areas so that you've got all of that smoothed out and you're aware of it once you start that ERP transition down the road. And really then just strategic planning. You want to look at your resources. And so if you break up the implementations, then you can have all of your finance and your HR people and your IT people focused on the ERP because they know that the payroll is already taken care of. And so that way you're not stressing all of your resources.
And that's a big one. That's something that I bring up all the time when I'm talking with folks about making these types of changes. I mean, I don't know how many of you have already been through any kind of software implementation before, but it's a heavy burden and it takes a lot of resources to get done. And then can you imagine doing two of those at the same time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and that's what we're calling the Big Bang approach,
Yeah.
actually, is when you try to do all of that at once. And so it really can lead to maybe more challenges, in that transitioning. And so we really encourage you to break those up so that your resources are not stretched. And then as far as management, on something like this, what I would say is make sure that you're engaging your HR and your IT departments. Get everybody's buy-in, let them know what's going on. So that helps with smoother transition. Also inform and educate your team, your employees about changes that are going to be happening, so that they're open to that and that that transition goes well. And then obviously take advantage of all of the training, the materials, and everything that is provided for you with your new technology. Just maximize the benefits of what you're getting and your investment in that technology. Okay, Michael, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's talk about finding the right payroll solution for you or for your clients. So there's some key factors that you're going to want to look at when doing an evaluation of who's going to be the best provider for payroll and for HR. And so what we're going to really look at is assessing the business needs and the payroll complexity. Does your organization require more control and flexibility over your payroll processes, how data goes into payroll, how you're working with your payroll taxes? If you're looking to have that hands-on control versus having like an outsourced solution where somebody's running the payroll for you, this is something that's going to be a big factor there. Determining integration capabilities. Will the payroll system work with your new and existing systems? And that's kind of what we're talking about specifically in the Microsoft Dynamics space here. Looking at what's going to work with your current provider of GP, and then for the future, what system you might migrate to, whether that's Microsoft Business Central or Microsoft Finance and Operations. Does the system integrate with both what you currently have and what you're going to have in the future to make sure it's a smooth transition and your employees have the best possible data going for them? Considering the costs, of course, that's always probably going to be numero uno when it comes to that. What are the soft and hard costs of migrating to a new payroll system and going through the implementation and going through those growing pains of learning the system for both you and for your administrators and for your employees who are going to access their pay stubs, setting up new logins, all of that stuff. Not just the cost of what it says on the quote, but everything that's going to be inferred with that change.
Well, and the other
Uh,
thing to consider when you talk about soft costs, Michael, is you think about somebody gave me this statistic years ago, and it just kind of resonated with me is that if someone is handling your HR, your payroll, and they make 100K, that's about $50 an hour. So if you save by upgrading your processes and your technology, if you save just 1 hour a week for that person, that's $2,500 a year.
mhm. Yeah, that's a
And
great
so,
point.
yeah, so if you think about kind of the time that you save in these processes, all these manual processes, oftentimes you may find that it's a wash.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point. And that's I talked with somebody a couple of months ago who she was literally putting in like 16, 17 hours a day. She said sometimes she was
Hmm.
up until 2 or 3 in the morning working remotely, being the payroll and HR person. One, obviously, that's a lot of hours that you're paying as an employer, but at the same time, that's high potential for that employee to burn out and leave. And then what happens if you
Absolutely.
have to bring somebody else in and completely train them, learn all the new processes, everything like that? That's a
Hmm.
nightmare. And so being able to have a system that automates a lot of that stuff and reduces that time and saves all kinds of costs associated with that.
Yep,
And that's
absolutely.
something to take a look at, also when you're looking at like for budget for an implementation. Not only are you paying potentially for implementation or for that project to be completed in that time, but that's also hours that your employees are moving away from their other duties to make sure that they can get this going. So there's another sunk cost
Correct.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of different things to consider there, and that's something that we can help you navigate. And then, of course, evaluating the vendor experience and expertise. Do they have experience with your ERP industry or business size? When it comes to us, we've been working in the Microsoft landscape for a long time, 20 plus years. And I think that we, especially some of our senior people here, have knowledge that most people aren't going to have when it comes to these dynamic solutions. And being able to have somebody like that that you can trust, Greenshade's been a trusted provider to manage taxes and be compliant. And that's where we've moved on to with payroll now. Just being able to trust somebody like that and be able to know that you have the knowledge base behind you to make sure that you can confidently make a change. I think that's a big deal.
Absolutely.
So, talking about the business needs and payroll complexity, that's where we kind of get into talking about what's going to work the best for your business. You don't want to force payroll into an ERP solution that doesn't fit with your unique needs or your growth trajectory. So if you're planning to migrate to an ERP solution that's in the Dynamics workspace, you want to make sure that you have a payroll provider that is going to fit what your needs and growth are for that, and not just for the next 12 months or 18 months, but for the next 5 years potentially. Make sure that there's somebody that's going to support what you're looking for completely and what's going to be the best way to tell that. And so, that's something like what we do it here at Greenshades. We're not kind of your cookie cutter solution. We're going to make sure that we evaluate your needs throughout the time that we're talking to make sure that we're going to be the proper choice. We're taking all of that information in consideration. We're keeping that. And if you do decide to move with us, that's all being shared with our implementation team so that we can customize as best as we can your implementation to fit those needs. And so that's going to be something where you have a project manager who is working hand in hand with you to make sure that we're fitting everything with that. Weekly 1 hour meetings at minimum to make sure that we're doing the right things during implementation to make sure that we're providing for you what you need. So, we also take a look at considering the size, complexity, and requirements of your business for deciding on a payroll solution. Green Shades, we have our own niche and we can provide for a lot of people, but we have a kind of a sweet spot that we really look at as far as for what our ideal client is. I would say that there are some other companies out there who may not think exactly that way. And so they're kind of, we'll take anybody and everybody. But that's, some people, some of that information, some of those pieces can get a little bit lost in the cracks when you have that kind of approach. And so I think that we get a little bit more personal and we want to make sure that we're supporting you as best as we can.
So I love to talk about the differences between in-house and outsourced payroll solutions because I've actually worked in both environments and I am a huge advocate for in-house solutions at this point. And so just kind of wanted to share that, with an in-house solution, a company gets to maintain operational and financial controls, which I think is huge personally. And so if you think about operational controls, With an outsourced solution, you really have to conform to their payroll schedules. And the reason they do this is because they want you to run your payroll by a certain date so that they can impound the funds. They have them in hand before they ever send a direct deposit out. That way that they're covered. So if you NSF'd or the company NSFs, that they're not they're not out that money. And so with an in-house solution, we don't impound the funds. So you can run your payroll whenever you want to. You do not have to conform to our business schedules. The other aspect of that is that you're maintaining financial controls. And so, the experience with an outsourced solution is that when you hit submit on that payroll, they are reaching into your account. They're taking out 3 impounds. They take out one for direct deposit, one for your taxes, and one for their fees. Well, as we know, a lot of those taxes are not due until the end of the quarter. So they're floating an account for you to pay your taxes when they're due. The reality is they're investing those funds. And so to me, for you to be able to have those funds to either invest yourself or have better cash flow is just huge. And so you have a lot more flexibility and financial controls with in-house. Plus, you get to choose your banking relationships. One of the firms that I worked with in the past was actually using Silicon Valley Bank for their direct deposits. And so when Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, I started getting texts at 6:30 in the morning and people were not getting paid. And so that's a very stressful situation for a company. And so with a in-house solution, you get to pick your banking relationships, you get to control those processes. So you maintain the operational and financial controls. I personally think that's huge. One of the cool things about it too is that we also have a lot more flexibility. So you won't find that most of your outsourced payroll companies are really doing full integrations with your ERPs. They may integrate or do what we call a GL interface, but they don't have those deep integrations. And so what you see here is a GP integration, and you can see that those are bidirectional integrations. And this is just addressing payroll information. But what you'll see is that, as you bring an employee on, data flows into GP. As you run your payroll and your GL, it's gonna flow back into GP.
Yeah, and that's really valuable, obviously, in a lot of different ways. But making sure that we can provide for your current system is just a big help, And
Mhm.
also one of the things that I encounter a lot with GP, which is something we haven't really brought up too much in this session today, but what types of HR systems they're using, and having that HR flow into payroll as well, and have that be integrated as well, and then going back into GP for any of that information. So that's another key piece that we don't even really talk about, but just makes life that much easier.
And then also, when you decide you're going to go ahead and potentially make a move, if you are considering staying in the Dynamics family, we're also integrated with Business Central. And so, once you're on board, we can integrate you with GP. And then when you decide to move, we can integrate you with BC as well. And we don't charge for that integration to move you.
As soon as
Mhm.
you go live, you just reach out to our support, tell them what you need to do, and they can switch everything over to match up with the dimensions within BC. So it's seamless.
Yeah. And what you'll see here too is that, we are integrating with the jobs module, things like that. So if you can get some really good job costing information across, and that can flow back and forth.
Okay, so cost considerations. We've talked a lot about the soft and hidden costs payroll can present your clients. So let's talk a little bit more about the details on that. So what pricing model suits the business? Some providers do a base cost plus a per employee per month cost. Does that per employee per month cost work for you? Discuss what works for them, what works for your clients, what works for your business. Is that what's going to make the most sense? An annual cost, what are we talking about there? Some providers can charge up to 35% of the annual contract fee for implementation. Um, so you want to make sure that you're not taking on a lift that takes them out of your budget. So what kind of budget do you have set up for not just a payroll change, but also for your ERP migration? Those two can be part of the same piece of the pie. And, do you need to split that up over between 2 years or two quarters or two halves? What's going to make the most sense there? Um, does the payroll provider charge extra fees for key features? like adding on a different things like HR access or anything like that. So you don't want to really you don't want to get, nobody wants to get nickel and dime. That's kind of the big thing for that, for basic functionality, especially something that you would expect from a modern solution. Some of the providers out there don't provide garnishment management and HR updates unless it's a higher package. And that's something that you want to be aware of and make sure that you get the details on it, or fully aware of all of those things when you're considering and evaluating different vendors and trying to make a choice. So that's kind of a
Yeah.
big thing there.
Yeah, Mike, when I was working in the outsourced payroll company, it was very transactionally focused. So everything you did in the system was considered a transaction and it could trigger another fee.
Yeah, and that's something that we just don't do. I mean, we have a complete
Mhm.
package solution. We have a couple different packages to suit the needs of what you have for HR, but it's HR, payroll, and payroll taxes. And we don't do any of that nickel and dime stuff. If you have however many different pay runs you need that are required for your business, they're unlimited to you with Greenshades. Archiving of your pay history, as long as you're a Greenshades client, is always there all the way back to the beginning. You don't have to worry about any of that little stuff like that could be transactional. The only thing that's going to come into play with that for us is if you need us to print mail checks. Other than that, we don't do anything like that.
Yeah, so much easier to budget, to know where you're going, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah. And then this one, to me, the next kind of bullet point here, does customer support cost extra? That one's like one of the biggest ones to me. I mean, if you're providing a solution to a client, you should be able to support that without any additional charge. And that's something that, I hear from a lot of different clients to varying degrees of what they've experienced with support with different providers. I mean, with Greenshades, we definitely get personal with that. Our support is there to really make sure that you're there. If you're part of our tax solution, you have a dedicated tax expert. We have a great team for support for payroll who's there at any given time to where they can answer an email or pick up the phone and give you a call if you reach out. None of that is any extra cost to you. That's all what we do. It's kind of a white glove, really support type situation.
Yeah, and we don't disappear. When we bring a client on, I know that with a lot of the large outsourced payroll companies, once the ink dries, you never hear from that person again. And this organization is not like that. I mean, I have clients reaching out to me on a regular basis. Hey, I've got a question. Hey, can you help me with this? And we're always there. So,
No,
so you have a full team.
and I think that I can speak for Jody on this. Is something that we both do, and I think the majority of our team does. If I have a client that I signed on 6 months ago, back in November, for instance, I'll take this as an example. I reached out and just gave him a call out of the blue the other day just to make sure everything's going well. We're going to check in. We're personal. You guys matter to us, so that's something
Mhm.
that I think that we take pride in. And then let's take the last one here. Does the new provider help with soft costs? Speeding up processes and reducing the risk fees due to compliance mistakes, anything like that. So with GP, many users are kind of looking at it as our payroll is free because it comes with GP. But the soft costs can add up just as much as the hard costs. Maintaining the on-premise software, extra time spent on new integrations, or adding in those bolt-on processes that we talked about before. Cost and time it takes to correct any mistakes and reissue checks. The risk of fees and penalties for compliance mistakes. If you have any of those that pop up, it's definitely not free anymore. In fact, it almost can be a negative cost. And so that's something that when you have a modern payroll solution like Greenshades, you avoid, because that we take that lift on for you. So expertise and experience. This is talking about us. So when you're looking for a solution to provide functionality and depth beyond payroll, this is what the right solution is going to bring to the table for you. The experience. We talked about Greenshades being 20 plus years of dynamics and tax expertise. That's not going away. We're a great partner with Microsoft. We are closely tied with them, and we want to make sure that not only do we have our integrations currently running as they are, we're going to keep developing those integrations to get better and better. We see it all the time with product releases that we have. Compliance, automated compliance checks and tax table updates. That's a big deal. We have a lot of different things that go into that. When it comes to compliance, we're compliant in all 50 states. So we stay that way. So you don't have to worry about that scenario that Jody mentioned earlier, where something changes at the beginning of the year and you're out of compliance because you did things the old way. The system's going to stop you from doing that because the compliance updates are already going to be in there. The new regulations are already going to be adhered to. So you don't have to worry about that. Strong security and audit controls. The cloud-based system is really a secure system, multi-factor authentication, password complexity rules that you can adjust at all the times, lockout and expiration rules, IP address whitelisting, you name it. Really, that's what the cloud system does. We're backed by Microsoft Azure for authentication. So that's what the platform that we run on. It's very secure. Most of the major cloud-based systems use that throughout anywhere that you see in the world. So that's really where we're going to be strong. And then, of course, we talked about our support model. We have our personalized support model that's really going to be, I think, superior to most, where you reach out, you can talk to a live person. Oftentimes, you're going to be able to keep talking with the same person that you talk with about the issue going forward and kind of moving through it. They're going to email you, they're going to call you. If you need something, you can get your account executive like us, me and Jody involved, whatever it takes.
Absolutely. So, well, we've had everybody here for 40 minutes, so let's kind of start wrapping things up. So key takeaways, I would say evaluate your environment, just assess kind of your workforce, what's going on in your organization, where you're at with technology, and determine if it's the right time to evaluate your tech stack, maybe look at some different options and get in the cloud. Consider the payroll first approach. Like I said, think about those things, as far as prioritizing payroll in your migration, streamlining all of the technology, and kind of get yourself set up so that you can look at the bigger picture and not kind of adhere to that Big Bang theory where you're trying to do everything at once or waiting to the last minute to do it. I kind of laugh and talk about, the running of the bulls. The last thing you want to do is be in that last flood of people that are trying to find a solution at the last minute. And then choose the right software, analyze what your unique needs are, understand what solution is going to fit you best, so that you feel confident moving forward with the solution that you choose. And then just to make sure, we've talked a lot about payroll. Obviously, want you to understand that Greenshades is a full human capital management solution, hire to retire, so to speak. So all of your human resources, your onboarding, your document management, all of those types of things, benefit administration, time and labor management, as well as, of course, taxes and compliance, which is what y'all really know us by or from, as well as payroll. And so, just consider that we are a full solution.
Well, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel.